Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into one of the most ambitious figures in all of mythology, Zeus. You probably won't survive this, though, because not even the gods could escape his overwhelming power. From humble beginnings as a hidden child to becoming the supreme ruler of Olympus, Zeus didn't just claim power. He earned it in the most dramatic way possible. But the path to his glory was anything but easy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to hear from you. Post your location and local time down in the comments. It's always fun to see where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story of Zeus begins in a very ungodlike way. He wasn't born with a crown on his head, but instead he had to hide away like an ordinary mortal, for fear of being swallowed by his father, Cronus. Cronus, you see, had a rather strange habit of eating his children because he was paranoid that one of them would overthrow him. No, seriously. Now imagine, if you will, a baby Zeus wrapped in mystery and hidden away in a cave while his siblings were, well, breakfast. Yet, Zeus wasn't just an ordinary baby, and his survival set the stage for his future dominance over gods and men alike. But how did a child, born under such ominous circumstances, become the mighty Zeus we know today? Historians still argue whether it was sheer luck or divine intervention, but one thing's for sure: Zeus was destined for greatness. So, as he grew in strength and wisdom, it was only a matter of time before he began to claim his rightful place, seizing power from those who would dare oppose him. Let's talk about family drama, because Zeus' early years were filled with it. After all, when your dad's a tyrant and your mom's either tricking or hiding you, things tend to get a bit complicated. If you think your family's dysfunctional, wait till you hear about Zeus' childhood. Cronus, as paranoid as he was, swallowed his children in a desperate attempt to keep his power, but his wife, Rhea, had had enough. So, she tricked him with a rock wrapped in swaddling clothes instead of baby Zeus, sending the real Zeus away to grow up secretly. You could say it was the ultimate family plot twist, except it was all a bit too real. Zeus' rise didn't just take divine cunning, it took a little bit of revenge. After he grew strong enough, Zeus forced Cronus to regurgitate his siblings, one by one. Picture this. One minute, Cronus is quietly eating his kids for breakfast, and the next he's vomiting up fully grown gods and goddesses. Talk about a wake-up call. This moment not only set the stage for Zeus' ultimate ascendancy but also created an unbreakable bond between him and his siblings. Together they would face the greatest challenge of all, the Titans. Historians still argue whether Zeus' decision to bring his siblings back was an act of pure justice or a tactical move to strengthen his future reign. Either way, Zeus made sure that those who had been wronged were given a chance at revenge, setting the stage for the war that would change everything, the Titanomachy. It wasn't just about Zeus becoming the king of the gods, it was about making sure the world knew that he was in control. Forever. Now let's talk about the Titanomachy. This is where Zeus truly earned his reputation as an overachiever. You see, the Titans weren't just a bunch of overgrown, cranky gods who were ready to give up their seat at the table. They were fierce, strong, and ancient, the kind of group that doesn't like to lose its place at the top. But Zeus had a vision and he wasn't going to back down. What started as a family feud quickly escalated into a full-blown battle for the fate of the cosmos. Historians still argue whether Zeus was the true mastermind behind the rebellion, or if it was his brothers, Poseidon and Hades, who played a more pivotal role. What we do know is that it wasn't just brute strength that won the war, it was strategy, alliances, and, of course, the use of some pretty powerful weapons. Zeus wielded the Thunderbolt, his ultimate weapon, which symbolized his control over the sky and, by extension, the heavens. But it wasn't just Zeus' strength that turned the tide, it was the support of the Cyclopes and the Hundred-Handers, imprisoned by the Titans who owed Zeus their freedom. They gave Zeus his Thunderbolt, Poseidon his trident, and Hades his helmet of invisibility. Talk about a winning team. In the end, the Titans were defeated, and Zeus emerged as the undisputed leader of the gods. But this wasn't just about winning a war, it was about reshaping the world and setting a new order. As the gods emerged victorious, they claimed their domains. Zeus ruled the skies, Poseidon the seas, and Hades the underworld. Together they established the Olympian order. Historians still debate whether Zeus' victory was truly a triumph of justice, or whether it was a consolidation of power by a god who was just getting started. So, now that Zeus had won the Titanomachy, he was ready to cement his reputation as the god of the gods. But here's where things get really interesting. Zeus wasn't just a conqueror, he was a multitasker of epic proportions. You see, the Thunderbolt wasn't his only weapon. In fact, it wasn't even his most important role. Zeus became known as the god who could do it all: ruler, judge, protector, and even a bit of a romantic. But let's focus on his primary gig, the thunder god. Zeus' Thunderbolt symbolized so much more than just a weapon. It was a manifestation of his power over nature itself. Every bolt that cracked across the sky was not just a show of force. It was a reminder of Zeus' divine authority. Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a storm, the sky roiling with dark clouds, and suddenly, boom, a lightning bolt rips through the air. That's not just weather. That's Zeus saying, "I'm in charge here." Historians still argue whether the Thunderbolt's power came from Zeus' natural command over storms or from something more mystical, something that transcended the natural world. Was it a symbol of the divine order, or was it an actual, tangible force imbued with the raw power of the cosmos? Some say that it was the latter, that the Thunderbolt itself was a living, breathing entity that could not only strike down foes but also deliver justice across the land. After all, Zeus wasn't just about power for power's sake. He believed in balance, in maintaining order. And the Thunderbolt? Well, it was his tool for enforcing that order. So, while most gods are content with a single domain, Zeus wasn't going to stop there. He had the power of the heavens at his fingertips, but he also understood the delicate dance of justice. In his eyes, to rule was to maintain control, by any means necessary. But the real fun? The real fun came when he wasn't just ruling the skies. Let's take a little detour now. Zeus wasn't just a powerhouse in the skies, he also prided himself on his ability to keep things orderly on earth. His sense of justice wasn't just about smiting wrongdoers with a lightning bolt, although he certainly didn't shy away from that. It was about enforcing divine law across the land, especially for those under his care. He became the ultimate arbiter of right and wrong, making sure that mortals and gods alike followed his rules. But here's where it gets quirky. Sometimes his punishments were more about the spectacle than the lesson. Take the story of the infamous King Lycaon, for instance. In one of the most bizarre tales, Lycaon tried to serve Zeus a meal made from human flesh. Yes, you read that right, in an attempt to trick him. In response, Zeus didn't just smite him. He turned the king into a wolf. That's right, Zeus made a man into an actual werewolf, and the punishment? He would live as a wolf forever. Historians still argue whether this transformation was meant to symbolize the king's cruelty or if it was just Zeus being his usual dramatic self. Either way, it was a display of power that no one dared challenge. But what does this tell us about Zeus? Was he just an overachieving god with a flair for the theatrical? Or was he genuinely trying to establish divine laws that would maintain harmony? Historians still debate whether Zeus' tendency for extreme punishments was a necessary part of his justice system, or whether it was a way to keep others in line with fear. Was it about setting an example for mortals and gods alike? Or was it simply for his own amusement? Well, in the world of gods, you probably didn't ask too many questions. Zeus didn't just dispense punishment though. He was also the god of hospitality, a role that's often overlooked. You see, Zeus was known for protecting travelers and guests, making sure that hospitality was always honored. This was a crucial part of ancient Greek society, where breaking the sacred code of hospitality could lead to disastrous consequences. But again, Zeus wasn't just about being kind. He had a way of using hospitality to control the lives of mortals and gods alike. If you weren't on his good side, you'd best watch your door. Now, let's shift gears and talk about Zeus' love life, or should we say lives. While we've already seen Zeus wielding his power in epic battles and dispensing punishments, it turns out his relationships were just as dramatic. You see, for all his strength and dominion, Zeus was a lover, though not always a faithful one. His many marriages, affairs, and amorous escapades are legendary, and in each of these relationships, you can almost hear the gods rolling their eyes. So, buckle up because this is where things get complicated. Zeus' first and most significant marriage was to his sister, Hera. Now, this may sound a bit odd, but in the realm of ancient mythology, it was nothing out of the ordinary. Hera, the goddess of marriage and family, was Zeus' equal in many ways. But their relationship was far from smooth. Zeus, being the overachiever he was, had a bit of a reputation for straying from the fold. While Hera was dedicated to preserving the sanctity of their union, Zeus often had a different idea. And oh boy, the results were not pretty. Historians still argue whether Zeus' infidelities were a symbol of his power over his own desires or a reflection of his overwhelming need to assert control, even in matters of the heart. But regardless of the reason, his numerous affairs, many of which involved mortal women, created quite a stir. Take the story of Alcmene, for example, a mortal woman who became the mother of Hercules. Zeus, never one to shy away from a challenge, disguised himself as her husband Amphitryon, and the rest, as they say, is mythological history. While Hera's jealousy and wrath were understandable, and often downright vengeful, Zeus didn't let that stop him. Whether it was by changing form or using his divine charm, Zeus seemed to have an endless supply of tricks to win the affections of those he desired. Historians still debate whether Zeus' many affairs were a sign of his overwhelming desire for power over both gods and mortals, or whether they were simply part of his complex and unrelenting quest for dominance over everything in his path. Zeus didn't just father the mighty Hercules. He had children with countless others, including the wise Athena, born directly from his head, and the mischievous Hermes, who arrived as a newborn from his mother, Maia. Each of these offspring added to Zeus' legacy, whether by their direct contributions to mythological tales or by their unexpected encounters with mortals. And yet, despite all his charm, it seems the god of thunder couldn't win over his wife's heart completely. Let's take a moment to dive into the births of some of Zeus' most famous children because, as you might imagine, things get even more interesting here. Zeus didn't just father a few children and move on. Oh no, his offspring were some of the most powerful figures in Greek mythology, each with their own spectacular tales. But Zeus, ever the overachiever, didn't just have a few gods and demigods who were just famous. No, his children were nothing short of extraordinary. First, let's talk about Athena. Now, this isn't your typical birth story. Athena didn't just arrive, she sprang from Zeus' head, fully grown and fully armored. Picture it, Zeus writhing in pain after an unbearable headache, and then, whoosh, out pops Athena. Historians still argue whether this was a symbolic representation of wisdom springing from Zeus' mind or simply a rather dramatic way for Zeus to show off how powerful he was. Either way, Athena became one of the most revered deities in Greek mythology, embodying wisdom, warfare, and strategy. And let's be real, what better way for Zeus to show his control than by giving birth to the goddess of wisdom through his forehead? That's quite the power move. But that's just one of his children. Then there's Apollo, another of Zeus' sons, born to the Titaness Leto. Apollo wasn't just any god, he was the god of the sun, music, prophecy, and archery, and he had a certain way of making an impact wherever he went. Apollo's twin sister, Artemis, was just as mighty, goddess of the hunt and protector of women and children. Together they were a force to be reckoned with, and it was all because of Zeus. Some might say that his children were a reflection of his own complexity, an embodiment of the traits he most valued. After all, Athena was wisdom, Apollo was creativity, and Artemis was independence. But not all of Zeus' children were born through traditional methods. Let's not forget the mysterious case of Dionysus. Born from the thigh of Zeus after his first mother, Semele, tragically perished, Dionysus was the god of wine, revelry, and chaos. Dionysus' birth is one of the most peculiar stories in Greek mythology, especially considering that it involved Zeus taking a very, shall we say, hands-on approach to keeping things in control. Historians debate whether Dionysus' chaotic and hedonistic nature was a reflection of Zeus' own hidden desires or whether it was a divine gift to remind mortals that not everything should be in perfect order. In a way, the way Zeus fathered his children seemed to speak volumes about his own inner conflict between order and chaos. For each mighty god he created, he had a hand in shaping their role in the world. Athena's wisdom was a direct extension of his desire for control, Apollo's creativity mirrored his own divine ambition, and Dionysus was a reminder that sometimes, even gods need a little bit of wildness to break free from the confines of their power. But no discussion of Zeus' progeny would be complete without the extraordinary tale of Athena's birth. This one's a doozy. As I mentioned, Athena didn't just crawl out of some cradle or come into the world in a typical fashion. She literally sprang from Zeus' head. And that wasn't just some strange, quirky myth to make the god sound more powerful. Oh no, this was Zeus making a statement. Imagine being the king of the gods, sitting around on your throne one day dealing with the endless bickering of the Olympians, and then, out of nowhere, bam, you give birth to a fully grown goddess, clad in armor and carrying a spear. Now, let's slow down for a second and think about this. The birth of Athena wasn't just a random act of divine intervention. Historians still argue whether this dramatic birth symbolized Zeus' role as the ultimate source of wisdom and intellect, or if it was just the god's way of showing off. Athena, after all, wasn't just any child. She represented strategic warfare, wisdom, and justice. These were values that Zeus upheld as essential for maintaining order in both the divine and mortal worlds. So, what better way to reinforce that than by bringing forth a child who embodied those very traits directly from his mind? And don't forget, the circumstances surrounding her birth were equally intense. It all started when Zeus swallowed his first wife, Metis, in an attempt to prevent their child from being too powerful. But lo and behold, after swallowing Metis, Zeus began to experience the most excruciating headache. It wasn't long before Zeus called upon the god Hephaestus to relieve him of the pain. So, in true dramatic fashion, Hephaestus took an axe and split Zeus' head open, letting Athena burst forth fully formed and ready to take on the world. This strange birth, one that defied the natural laws of existence, symbolized a unique twist in the way the gods operated. Was it Zeus flexing his dominance in the most godly way possible? Or was it simply a divine reminder that the most important traits, wisdom, strength, justice, could be born from the most unexpected places? Historians still debate the deeper meaning of Athena's birth, but one thing is clear. It was another powerful moment for Zeus to stamp his authority over both the divine and mortal realms. Let's now turn our attention to Zeus' involvement in the Trojan War, one of the most famous conflicts in Greek mythology. Now, you might think that the mighty Zeus would be front and center, leading the charge for either the Greeks or the Trojans, but that wasn't quite his style. Zeus had a more hands-off approach. While he didn't throw himself directly into battle, he was still the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, ensuring that the conflict played out according to his divine plan. After all, what's a war without a little bit of divine meddling, right? Historians still argue whether Zeus' involvement in the Trojan War was a matter of upholding his role as the ultimate divine ruler or whether he was simply bored and wanted to see how mortals would manage. But whatever the reason, Zeus played both sides of the war, carefully guiding the fates of both the Greeks and the Trojans. You see, while Zeus did have his favorites, like his son Hector, the Trojan hero, he didn't let that stop him from ensuring that the war followed the will of the gods. The gods themselves were notorious for taking sides in the war, each with their own agenda, and Zeus had to play the delicate role of keeping everything balanced. If anyone got too far out of line, you could bet that Zeus would step in, often in ways that were completely unexpected. At one point, Zeus tried to end the war early by sending a dream to the Greek leader Agamemnon, urging him to attack Troy and end the conflict. But even with Zeus' intervention, the war raged on for another 10 years. Historians still argue whether this was Zeus' way of teaching the mortals a lesson in patience, or if he was just enjoying watching the chaos unfold. Either way, his role as the ultimate overseer of the Trojan War cemented his place as the ultimate power in the universe, able to influence the course of human history, all from his seat on Mount Olympus. So while Zeus wasn't out there swinging a sword like some of the other gods, he was undeniably the one pulling the strings. His decisions shaped the outcome of the war, proving once again that even when he's not physically involved, Zeus is never truly absent from the action. And for him, maintaining control over the war, no matter how long it lasted, was just another day at the office. Zeus' complex relationship with Prometheus offers yet another fascinating glimpse into the dual nature of his character. Part wise ruler, part fiery enforcer. Prometheus, the titan who defied Zeus to give fire to humanity, was one of those characters that stood up to the gods, pushing back against the established order. But why did Zeus, who normally favored order and law, react so violently to Prometheus' gift? Well, this story, like so many others, has a lot to do with Zeus' overachieving need for control. The myth goes that Prometheus, the titan who had sided with Zeus during the Titanomachy, turned against him when he saw the suffering of humanity. In his eyes, humans deserved the gift of fire, an element that would allow them to thrive, innovate, and survive. Prometheus wasn't just giving fire, though. He was giving humanity the potential to become creators in their own right. This went against Zeus' vision of the world, where the gods were supreme and mortals remained beneath them. So, when Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gifted it to humanity, it wasn't just an act of rebellion. It was a direct challenge to Zeus' authority. Historians still debate whether Zeus' punishment of Prometheus was driven by a sense of divine justice or an insecure need to reassert his dominance. For his act of defiance, Zeus chained Prometheus to a rock where an eagle would feast on his liver every day, only for it to regenerate overnight, ensuring that Prometheus' torment would be eternal. This gruesome punishment served not only as a reminder of Zeus' power but also as a symbol of the consequences of overstepping the boundaries of the divine order. But Zeus didn't stop there. His punishment wasn't just about taking revenge on Prometheus, it was also about making an example of him. By punishing Prometheus in such a public and painful way, Zeus reinforced his message that no one, not even a titan, was exempt from his authority. And yet, despite the punishment, Prometheus' gift to humanity endured. This ironic twist, where Zeus' punishment of Prometheus only made humanity stronger, shows just how complex Zeus' reign truly was. He may have been the ultimate ruler, but sometimes, even he couldn't prevent the unintended consequences of his actions. Let's shift our focus now to one of Zeus' lesser-known contributions, the creation of humankind. While many gods in Greek mythology are concerned with their own celestial issues, love, power, and the occasional war, Zeus had an undeniable hand in shaping the mortal world. After all, what's a king without subjects to rule? And what better way to exert his dominance than by creating humanity itself? But the creation of humans wasn't as simple as it sounds. It was a delicate balance, carefully orchestrated by Zeus himself. The myth goes that after the Titanomachy, when Zeus and his siblings had finally gained control of the heavens, he looked down on the earth and saw a world that needed order. But rather than simply imposing his will, Zeus took a more hands-on approach. He created humans. According to one myth, he shaped them out of clay and then breathed life into them, an act that showed his power over both the physical and spiritual realms. By creating humans, Zeus didn't just populate the earth. He also gave mortals a chance to rise and fall, to struggle and thrive, under his watchful eye. Historians still debate the motivations behind Zeus' creation of humanity. Was it a grand gesture of benevolence, a way to show his power and grace? Or was it more of a tactical move, creating beings to worship him and maintain his reign? In any case, Zeus wasn't content to simply create humans and leave them to their own devices. He gave them fire, as we saw with Prometheus, and he crafted their fate with meticulous care. Some myths suggest that Zeus even designed their personalities and traits to match the balance he sought to maintain. It wasn't enough for Zeus to simply create life. He wanted to control it, to make sure that mortals never forgot who was truly in charge. But not all was well with Zeus' creation. Over time, the mortals grew more defiant, more questioning of their place in the world. They began to think for themselves, to build their own civilizations and to challenge the gods. This, of course, did not sit well with Zeus. He wasn't about to let his creations forget their place. Mortals were his to command, not to question. So, when humans stepped too far out of line, Zeus would intervene, reminding them just who was in control. The punishment of humanity, like the punishment of Prometheus, was often a reminder that even the smallest misstep could be met with divine wrath. Zeus' relationship with humanity was, shall we say, complicated. On one hand, he created them, gave them life, knowledge, and purpose. But on the other hand, he was always watching, judging, and intervening. He wasn't just a passive observer of human affairs. Oh no, Zeus loved to meddle. And when he wasn't personally dictating the course of events, he was sending his messengers to do it for him. His role as overseer of humanity was both nurturing and controlling, guiding mortals but also keeping them in check. One of Zeus' most famous roles was as a guardian of justice. He was often called upon to resolve disputes, settle feuds, and ensure that mortals followed the divine laws he had set in place. If a mortal or even another god crossed a line, Zeus didn't hesitate to step in. He wielded the Thunderbolt like a judgment hammer, often punishing those who dared to defy the cosmic order. His punishments were notorious, sometimes cruel, sometimes oddly fitting, but always meant to remind the world of his authority. Take the story of Arachne, for instance. Arachne, a mortal weaver, boasted that her skill was greater than that of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and craft. Well, Zeus couldn't let that slide. He didn't directly intervene, but he allowed Athena to punish Arachne in the most ironic way, transforming her into a spider, a creature that would weave for eternity. This was classic Zeus, a master of both subtlety and spectacle. Was it about teaching humility? Or was it just a way to remind mortals that even their greatest achievements could be reduced to nothing in an instant? Historians still argue whether Zeus' role as a divine judge was simply about maintaining order, or if it was about ensuring that no mortal or god could ever threaten his dominance. His punishments were not just about retribution, they were about control. By ensuring that those who broke the rules faced dire consequences, Zeus cemented his position as the ultimate authority, both in the heavens and on earth. The act of judging others gave him an air of solemnity, but underneath it all, it was a way to remind everyone who truly held the reins of the universe. In fact, even when Zeus wasn't directly intervening, the very idea of his omnipresence was enough to keep mortals in line. They didn't need to see Zeus to know that he was watching. His influence was woven into the fabric of daily life, from the laws of hospitality to the way sacrifices were made. And when things got truly out of hand, you could always count on Zeus to show up, usually with a thunderbolt in hand just to remind everyone who was boss. But let's not forget about the challenges Zeus faced while ruling the gods themselves. Sure, he was the king of the heavens, but ruling over a collection of divine beings, many of whom were as proud and temperamental as the gods themselves, was no easy feat after all. The gods of Mount Olympus weren't just there for their good looks. They had their own agendas, desires, and tempers. Keeping everyone happy, or at least in line, was a full-time job for Zeus. One of the most persistent challenges Zeus faced was dealing with rebellious gods who didn't quite want to play by his rules. Take his brother Poseidon, for example. While Zeus ruled the skies, Poseidon ruled the seas, and the two often found themselves at odds. Poseidon was known for his strong-willed nature and his desire for greater control over the world, and while Zeus tried to keep the peace, there were moments when their rivalry flared up. But Zeus, ever the diplomatic ruler, knew how to handle these things. He didn't always have to use force. Sometimes a well-timed negotiation was enough to keep things calm. But when push came to shove, Zeus wasn't afraid to remind Poseidon who held the highest authority. And then there was Hera. Oh, Hera. Zeus' marriage to her was anything but harmonious. Despite being the queen of the gods, Hera often found herself at odds with her husband, especially considering his countless affairs with both goddesses and mortals alike. While Zeus was the one who held the throne, Hera wielded her own power as the goddess of marriage and family. But that didn't stop Zeus from causing mischief. The constant tension between them was like a soap opera for the gods, a divine drama that never truly seemed to end. Historians still argue whether Zeus' need to maintain control was driven by his own insecurities or whether it was simply a part of his larger role as the ruler of the cosmos. Whatever the case, it's clear that Zeus' leadership was a balancing act. One where diplomacy, divine interventions, and the occasional thunderbolt were all required to keep order. He may have been the king, but he had to constantly prove it. With his siblings, his fellow gods, and even with his own pride, Zeus' reign was marked by both triumph and turmoil. But here's the thing. Despite the internal conflicts, despite the squabbles and rebellions, Zeus was still the king. He outlasted his rivals, restored balance when things went wrong, and ultimately kept the divine order intact. And that's the mark of a true overachiever. No matter how many challenges arose, whether from his fellow gods or from mortal affairs, Zeus maintained his iron grip on the heavens. Now let's step back and ask the big question. Was Zeus really the heroic, overachieving god we think he is? Or was he, as some might argue, more of a tyrant? After all, his reign over the gods and mortals was far from perfect. While he achieved great things, often by sheer force of will, his methods were often questioned. Many saw Zeus as a god who was willing to do anything to maintain his position, whether it meant controlling his family, manipulating mortals, or even disrupting the natural order. His overachieving nature was not just about winning wars or commanding the heavens, it was about making sure no one ever questioned his authority. One of the more significant debates among scholars is whether Zeus' constant intervention in mortal affairs was a necessary part of his role as the god of justice, or whether it was a reflection of his own insecurities. After all, Zeus often intervened in the lives of mortals, sometimes saving them, other times punishing them, but always with the sense that he was the one who ultimately controlled their fates. Some argue that this was his way of keeping the mortal world in check, making sure it didn't get out of hand. Others believe it was a sign of Zeus' deep need to feel omnipresent, to have complete control over every aspect of existence, from the heavens to the smallest mortal life. But Zeus' need for dominance wasn't just a product of his own character. It was also built into the very fabric of Greek mythology. As king of the gods, Zeus was tasked with upholding the balance of the cosmos. His role was to ensure that the universe remained in order, and that every god and mortal knew their place. Yet, time and time again, Zeus had to remind everyone, including his fellow gods, that he was the one who truly held the reins. He punished those who overstepped their bounds, and he rewarded those who stayed in line. His actions may have seemed extreme, but they were always calculated, always with the aim of maintaining his vision of cosmic balance. But, as we've seen with his children and his dealings with mortals, Zeus wasn't all business and authority. His complexity as a ruler is what makes him such a fascinating figure in mythology. His overachievement wasn't just about power, it was about making sure that no matter what, the divine order was never questioned. In this sense, you could say that Zeus' need to control, to oversee everything, was more than just a personal flaw, it was part of what made him the king of the gods. So, perhaps the real question we should be asking isn't whether Zeus was too much of an overachiever, but rather, was there anyone else who could have done the job better? As we come to the end of our journey through the divine life of Zeus, it's time to reflect on his enduring legacy. Zeus' reign over the gods, his manipulation of mortals, and his constant struggle to maintain order make him one of the most fascinating figures in all of mythology. He was a ruler unlike any other, one who balanced justice and chaos with equal skill. But was his rule truly one of wisdom and fairness, or was it driven by an insatiable need for control? Zeus, the god of thunder, was undoubtedly an overachiever in the truest sense. He conquered the Titans, ruled the heavens, fathered mighty children, and maintained cosmic balance, all while dealing with the temperaments of gods and mortals alike. His actions were often swift and unforgiving, but they were always purposeful. His punishments were cruel, yes, but they always served to maintain order and discipline. For Zeus, it wasn't about being liked or loved, it was about being respected and feared. In that sense he succeeded. But was Zeus truly the god he wanted to be, or was he trapped by the very power he sought to control? He was never quite free from the constant need to assert his authority, constantly measuring his own worth against the chaos of the world around him. Whether it was through his relentless interventions in mortal affairs or his constant need to quell divine rebellion, Zeus' reign was always marked by a sense of imbalance, an unending struggle to assert himself as the supreme force in the universe. In the end, Zeus' legacy is one of complexity. He was both a tyrant and a hero, a lover and a judge, a god who shaped the world in his own image. He may have been an overachiever, but perhaps that was necessary to keep the cosmos in order. As for his influence on humanity and the gods, it's undeniable. His power, his will, and his unyielding quest for control left an indelible mark on mythology and on the way we view the gods. So, the next time you look up at the sky and see a storm brewing, remember, it could very well be Zeus still overseeing his kingdom, still ruling the heavens, and still ensuring that the balance of the world is maintained. Because no matter what happens, Zeus will always be there, watching over us all from his throne on Mount Olympus.